Our moderator, Alfonso Gutierrez, Cloud Advisory Lead, Enterprise Solutions in Cloud for KPMG Lower Gulf. And our panelists, Ross Macdonald, Construction Project Manager, Datacenter Delivery, Middle East and Africa region for Microsoft. Rajnish Sharma, Director of IT Infrastructure and DevOps, G42. Last but not least, Philip Yu, General Manager, Tencent Cloud International, MENA region. And their topic today is the big switch. How will Hyperscale evolve and how will this shape the industry? So why don't we welcome them to the stage? Thank you.
I hope today you will enjoy as well as me having a conversation with the gentleman here, even before joining this panel, because we have today a great representation from different hyperscalers, and the topic is really very interesting. So it's about how the hyperscalers will evolve. And these panelists today, they will give us their point of view about the hyperscalers, and we've got representation here from Microsoft, Group 42 and Tencent. So I think that there are no better people to give us the point of view than the hyperscalers by itself. And I think that's the value and something that is going to keep you engaged today in this session. So I'm going to start today. I'm going to ask each one of the panelists to introduce themselves, to indicate your role, and just answer a quick question about how do you define hyperscale. Ross?
Yeah, good afternoon everyone. So Ross Macdonald from Microsoft. I've recently relocated back to Dubai in the Middle East after a period in APAC, delivering data centers for Microsoft there and re-engaging for our delivery from a construction and project perspective across the Middle East and Africa. Defining hyperscale, I think from my experience and now from a Microsoft-centric perspective, it's really focused on servicing that customer demand. The local delivery, but making sure that we are tying that back in both our regional and global support network, and taking that through in terms of delivering that scale safely, at the necessary quality, but more importantly, or as importantly, focus on the time to market and the speed for that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Philip. I have been in this region since 2012. So I used to work for Huawei, Alibaba Cloud. 2 months ago, I was a general manager for Alibaba Cloud in the region for the last 4 years, and I joined Tencent since September. And Tencent Cloud is a new player in the market. I'm now taking the role of the general manager for Tencent Cloud. So how to define? I work in multiple hyperscaler names from China. I think mainly for the hyperscaler, we talk about how much you can fulfill the requirement of your client in terms of capabilities, in terms of geographic coverage, in terms of ecosystem, right? You should not be a single prospective player. The customer should be able to resolve all the business requirement from the hyperscaler. Not say 100%, at least 90% of the requirement should be settled with one player, which is a hyperscaler. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Hi, myself Rajnish. I'm Director for Infrastructure and DevOps in G42. I'm in this region for the last 15 years almost now. I've worked with data center and telco companies like Salat and Moro. So to me, I look at hyperscaler term in slightly different way. So because I come from core infrastructure background, so for me, scalar itself is a word which is like ever expanding. And in terms of data center, the hyperscaler, it's all about how much scalability we can, or the hyperscalers can provide to their end customers in terms of whatever services they're providing, right? So it can be a colo, it can be cloud services, it can be a SaaS platform that is running on the top. So it depends, right? So it's all about ever expanding data centers.
Thank you, Regis. And just and allow me as well even to give my particular view about hyperscale. So I think that the first thing that it comes to the mind to everyone here in this audience is that when we are talking about hyperscale, it's infinite capacity, right? It's about being able to do something in a scale, amazing scale. But the second thing that I think is interesting as well in terms of this term is the breadth of the services that you offer when you are a hyperscaler. And I think that we've got now today a great panelist to give us a view, for example, about how important, how they see why it's so important at this moment and why there's so much interest in the hyperscalers. So, Rod, maybe you can break the ice?
I'll try. Why do I think there's so much interest? I think, again, from experience of being a consultant for a number of years and now with Microsoft, I think the capability to deliver, again, what I said in terms of my definition, servicing that customer demand in terms of that single source, whether that's single provider, single service, but also being able to expand that across the suite of services as well. I think the localization aspect is very, very important. I did speak about kind of tying that back in both regionally and globally. But I think not just the data center project or the customer itself, but the impact that a hyperscale project could have on the local economy, the local community, in terms of overall investment, training. It's an easy word to use, but the kind of sustainability and the longevity of that. So I think that's very, very important. And the other aspect that I think why hyperscale is gaining so much interest is going back to kind of basics on utility demand. And there's a lot of discussion, and again, easy words to say, but focused on sustainability, carbon offset or carbon reduction and renewables. One of the biggest utility draws in demand is what we do. And I think that opportunity in terms of that local investment, that local support, going into that kind of technology and innovation as well.
Yeah, I think Ross gave a very good answer to that. Just to add on a little bit, I think if you look at the cloud industry evolution, the first wave is actually in China, is driven by the internet business, right? You see a lot of internet giant players like Tencent, like Alibaba coming, then even ByteDance, they become the first batch of the hyperscaler users. And they feed a lot of money for the hyperscaler to grow in the initial stage, and they pass through the toughest financial status. I think one of the things here is because of the whole environment changing, right? So we used to say there's a clear boundary between enterprise and internet, but even today you see a lot of telecom business is actually being challenged by internet players. So all the companies are facing a very dynamic competition environment right now. So people trying to see, when I'm facing a very fierce external competition, what is my core value? What is my organization's core value into this business? Am I still trying to become everything done by myself? I have my business expertise, I have technology expertise, I have operation expertise, or let's focus on my core expertise, which is the business side. Then once the hyperscaler is mature and secure enough, I'm willing to hand over my business to them, right? So this whole dynamic environment is changed. The mentality of the enterprise, of the entrepreneurs, they are changing the whole mentality. Instead of control everything, they are willing to give out some stuff which is not their core competitiveness into the hyperscalers. That's why I think sometimes we say, when I was in Huawei, we say, when there's an evolution driven from the inside, it's a revolution, right? So when you push from outside, it's a disaster. So sometimes enterprise is changing the mindset because of the external environment. This is also another driving factor why hyperscaler now is getting more and more demand from the companies.
Hi. So I come from G42, right? So we are not an hyperscaler that came from outside. So we are 100% UAE based, Abu Dhabi based company. We have our friend from Kazna. We are probably the owners of the biggest data centers in UAE. The whole idea is the way things are changing, and if I see last 15 to 17 years. The way things have been changing in the way we do business across the globe, and I'm talking specifically about UAE. I've been here for 15, 16 years now. The way I've seen the things changing from the business to the way we do business, to kind of workloads, the kind of data that is being managed by hyperscalers are way to go, and that's going to stay for some. And we may see, you never know, we may see extreme hyperscalers coming in, right? Where things that are happening now in hours and days and weeks, we may see some kind of systems coming up which can happen in seconds, right? Quantum is on the way. We may not have in UAE right now as we speak, but quantum is on the way, right? 5-7 years back, we used to have big, heavy servers, right, in our data center. Now they have been replaced by one NVIDIA pod, and that's it. You're good to go, right? Going forward, this will change. So yeah, we are here to hug them, extreme hyperscalers. We'll hug them. We'll ask them to stay in UAE, and yeah, that's the way to go. Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you. And I think that we have seen from you guys the view of the importance of the services that the hyperscalers are giving, the location, the impact in the local economies of having and bringing the hyperscalers in countries. So thank you, Ross, for that one. So it was, from your side as well, Philip mentioning that it comes the importance for the internet and the revolution of internet, which is bringing a lot of attention now. And Rajesh just give us as well a view about the local space. But what happened? What happened in the last, because the hyperscalers have been in the last 25 years, 20 years, or at least it's been a long road. So what is the difference? What it makes different at this moment? Why the hyperscalers are different than before? So I just want to start maybe with this with it.
Yeah. So see, it has been happening slowly, and probably we were not aware of it. Yeah. So when I bought my first PC at home in 97, 98, it used to run on 64 MB memory. Now I have a 32 gig laptop, and I say it's not running good. Yeah, it's running slow. See, it was a cascading effect from here, right? All the way from normal desktop at home to back-end processing of applications and data and big data platforms and Hadoops and AIs of the world, right? So what happened? No, it was us. It was the businesses. The way the demand grew, right? Earlier, I'm sure everybody over here must have seen it, right? If you would have said, "Oh, I have 1 terabyte of data," oh wow, you handle 1 terabyte of data, right? Now in one of my business units, I handle 35 petabyte of data. Yeah. So the whole idea is the way businesses have grown, the way the requirements have grown, and specifically COVID and post-COVID phase, we will see this taking another leap in next 2-3 years. That's going to happen with the kind of research and the laboratories that are coming in the healthcare sector coming up. At least for sure in that particular sector, I'm very sure we'll see it going more. Yeah. So that.
Yeah, I think I'm typical when I witnessed this because actually when I was in Alibaba, where Alibaba Cloud is the first hyperscaler who came to Dubai, we set up a joint venture with Miraz and Dubai Holding. So we started our first data center in Dubai since 2016. At that time, there's no other guys here, right? We started very early, and the business in the very beginning is going very tough, actually, because we're trying to educate the market, try to convince people that public cloud is safe. You don't need to worry about it. But it's moving very slow. But when time comes to 2020, there's a fast booming. My whole data center, within 3 months, still up to 95% utilized. Within 3 months. So I think the whole thing, if you look at the last 25 years, I think the last 2 years, is actually a very quick acceleration, at least for the Middle East and African market, because people start to notice that to deal with these kind of uncertainties, you have to go digital, you have to go online, and the best way to go to make it happen is to go with hyperscalers. And also in the meanwhile, Microsoft came to the market, the Amazon coming, Google announcing Saudi. So all the hyperscalers come here to educate the market. then when people get more educated, they get more familiar with the cloud, they feel safe about it, then this whole process will get accelerated. It's moving very fast right now. I think this COVID do a very good job to help the hyperscaler to grow this region. And also all the hyperscalers, they also spend a lot of time to educate the enterprise, educate the market to get the trust of the market. That is also one of the reasons MENA now is going fast growing market for cloud. Yeah.
Can I add as well, like, I think previously living and working in the Middle East in the DC industry, spending some time in APAC over the last 3 years, a lot of what we focused on was the demographic and the emerging behaviours of that demographic. And within the APAC region, there are some saturated sub-regions or markets. And what we're actually seeing now as Microsoft is a lot of trends in terms of what we would refer to as the kind of new emerging tri-state of Southeast Asia. So the Philippines, Vietnam and Cambodia in terms of the age of the population and the behaviours that I said. Coming back to the region now, part of my remit in terms of construction and project delivery is the GCC, the Middle East, but going into North and Central Africa. And in terms of our business case and region strategy and region design, we're seeing quite a lot of similarities from that. So I think as well, the demographic shift and the behavioural shift across that is driving it as well.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much, guys. So we've seen that what is changing is that there are some technologies that when you put in a huge effort in the scale, it becomes a huge monster of opportunities like Hadoop. So we are mentioning as well that you can touch at this moment in UAE that you have already the hyperscalers, and is the change in the behavior. You know, when you have this technology at your tips of your fingers. So I just want to get a view from you guys. Maybe I'm going to start with you, Philip, about what is the value of a scale, you know, for the customer in general.
Yeah. I think the scale actually make a very big sense. If you look at the typical hyperscalers today, you look at AWS, right? AWS started their own e-commerce business as Amazon, and when the e-commerce business reached to a certain scale, they are able to productize their own technology as a service to the market. Look at Google, right? They have a search engine, advertisement technologies. Look at Alibaba, e-commerce, even Tencent, WeChat. So I think not 100%, but most of the hyperscalers today, they start from their own business, but once they reach to a certain scale, they find out that, first of all, the third-party technology cannot meet my own requirements, right? But if I pay them to do it, then that's like an impossible amount of money. The second is, because of their own scale, they are able to build a feasible business plan, right? I mean, even by investing such a big amount of technology, by serving my own demand, I can financially still affordable. I can financially still be break-even. So by doing that, they are willing to invest. And once the ball start to roll, then become a non-stop story, right? They start to build data centers, not only serving by themselves, maybe more than 50% serving external market. That's what I'm saying. I think the most important thing is the initial scale. The initial scale will help the hyperscaler to start the business without a big loss. And once they turn into the break-even point, they will keep investing, keep focusing on external demand. So the scale is really important. The second one is, once you have the scale, in China we say scale means traffic, right? Once you become a traffic entry point, you can build an ecosystem. Because most of the hyperscalers today, they own the technology for infrastructure at the past. But at the same time, because of the scale, a lot of SaaS players started to come to hyperscaler and onboard into the marketplace, because the hyperscaler have a lot of traffic. Users come to hyperscaler seeking for everything, even though most of the SaaS or PaaS is not owned by the hyperscaler. So this scale actually also means popularity, means traffic, means volume of business. So that's why the hyperscaler is able to build a non-comparable ecosystem compared to the non-hyperscaler players in the market.
No, I think that you have summarized very nicely, the value of the scale And I think it's a game changer, and I really believe totally that the software as a service providers, they are starting looking to their hyperscalers because they cannot get that kind of a scale and that kind of efficiencies. And it's really, really a difference.
So I was just going to add, I think as well, hyperscale, what I was saying, it does give that opportunity in terms of delivering that capacity. But part of definitely our strategy is still the partnership and the delivery with colo providers and lease providers as well, because we need that flexibility in terms of, I mentioned at the start, the time to market. It is a very, very competitive market, so it's about finding that balance as well.
It's true, and then it gives you the opportunity of start asking the questions, the tricky ones, when the rubber hits the road. How the hyperscalers are maybe impacting the enterprise data centers and the colocation service providers, because they are coming to the region and they are creating a huge disruption. So I just want to get maybe, Ross, your view about this.
I mean this very, very respectfully, but I think commercial capacity is one of the biggest aspects. Some of the regions I've worked on recently in APAC and now coming back to the region, there is that capacity to flex a bit more, both in terms of reputation, in terms of name and brand, and then commercially as well. The other impact I think that hyperscalers are having on not just the region, but probably more the industry and the sector. I think they're putting so much pressure on the sector, pressure on the supply chain, both in terms of material procurement, but more importantly, definitely from me and from probably previous experience and maybe even current experience, the resources in terms of the delivery side as well. The right resources, it's easy to fill a room or put a team in or fill up an organisation chart in terms of project specific or looking at it kind of programmatically, but the right resources with the right skill set and the right capability, I think the demand in the market from hyperscalers, but in terms of the growth, I think it's putting a lot of strain on it. And the other question is kind of, is the growth actually sustainable as well? I spoke earlier about kind of the utility demand, and it gives the opportunity in terms of sustainability, carbon offset, carbon reduction, renewables. But again, just a very, very, very quick statistic. Microsoft, in terms of Ireland, we actually draw just over 16% of their primary electricity demand. So when you actually think about what that sustainable or unsustainable growth in the sector is doing, it's that knock-on effect on other services and other infrastructure.
Okay, no, thank you. So, Regis, maybe you have another view. Is the hyperscalers are going to cannibalize our business, and how do you see it?
Not exactly. So they're going to coexist for sure, right? And the example that I gave is we have data centers. We run data centers here. We run G42 Cloud, right? And then we have next door is Microsoft and AWS and probably Tencent coming in. So they're gonna, for sure, they're gonna coexist. And then the idea is that what are the services that we are going to offer, right? So I may be, let's say, for example, G42 Cloud, I may be very good at 70% of workloads running on infrastructure itself, for example, right? Probably Microsoft can be very good at running SaaS like Office 365, Dynamics CRM, blah, 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 right? So I won't go and compete in that. No, I won't do that. I won't waste my time and resources on that. Rather, turning it towards infrastructure as a service where I'm good at, right? So what I'm trying to say is both are going to coexist, right? Co-location will be there. It has been there for years. It's going to be there for years. It will remain there. And local providers like us, like Kazna, they're going to stay. Absolutely.
Thank you. Philip, anything to add?
I think just to add one point, because the location selection of the hyperscalers is different, thinking different ways. When I was in Alibaba, then Alibaba have a very clear strategy. They will only build a cloud when there's a strong e-commerce demand. Because Alibaba is an e-commerce companies, right? When I come to Tencent, they're telling we're only focused on those places have a very huge gaming users will build data centers. So the hyperscaler, they have their own way of combining the cloud business with the existing business. So the cloud, first of all, is serving the internal business, right? So that's why when they select the location for data center, they always look at the distribution of the existing business. So that may be something as a data center provider you should think about as well, right? So if you want to fulfill the requirement of a certain hyperscaler, think about their business distribution globally and how you can meet that requirement instead of only look at your own coverage. I think that's a different way of thinking. Yeah,
absolutely. And do you think, guys, if there's any change in the perceptions, about the customers with the hyperscalers? So have you seen that maybe 10 years ago they were looking at the hyperscalers in one way and now it's totally different? So is there anything that maybe you want to pitch in on that one?
Speaking honestly, I think it's all driven by time to market. Yeah, I think, again, I spoke about demographic and behaviour, guilty of this. Yes. I could speak about my wife as well, but there is this focus now, we want everything immediately, and I think that's putting so much pressure on time to market, which again goes back to some of the impacts that I was saying in terms of resources, how we deliver, the schedule, the program constraints. That I think is really driven by time to market.
Okay, now anything else you want to add about that?
So
perception maybe from the customer.
Yeah, perception has changed because, as I said, I've been here for long enough, and not 365. I've worked on the 365 version 1, which was BPOS back in 2008. Well, hardly few people know about BPOS. I don't know if people know about it. So I worked on that as well. So looking at those days when I used to be, a pre-sales guy, I used to try to sell 365 mailboxes, right? And those were slammed on me. Oh, no, data is going outside your country. Now and now look at the acceptability that is there in the market now, right? Even before, say, for example, Microsoft landed here in local data centers in UAE, acceptability was started building before that. And once it landed here, it just, went out of the roof and people really accept. So yes, there's a major shift that has happened from a big no. I remember those days, as I said, doors have been slammed on me to now that people are running their critical workloads, out on the hyperscalers. Only if, I can talk about entities that I deal with or G42 deals with. So if the mandate allows, yes, they will look at the hyperscalers for sure. Yep.
Thank you, guys. I just want to. I know that I will give a little bit of time just for the Q&A, so no worries. I just want to go with the last question about asking the audience and the panelists how they see the evolution of the hyperscalers. So how they see in the next years, and I just want to maybe we can go with Ross again.
I could circle back in terms of like technology innovation. I think there's been a lot of good discussions around that. Speaking now, having transitioned from consultant to developer side or owner side a couple of years ago, I think the focus moving forward will become operationally front-end focused. Operations, and again I mean this respectfully, it's arguably the most important part of the data center, but or the project, but it's kind of maybe pushed to that back end post execution. Definitely in terms of Microsoft and initiatives that we are looking at is that front end requirements in terms of day to day, week to week, day one, day in, the flexibility around that, but also bringing in kind of the integrity around the security side as well. I think that's where, when we're building at this scale and at this speed, both regionally and globally, I think the operational and the end user part coming more front end is really going to drive that.
Okay, and I'm going to extend the question to the rest of the panelists and even asking them in another notch, how this hyperscale is going to transform as well the way that the data centers are designed, operated, and even financed in Middle East, right? So I think it's important that we have that view. And maybe, Philip, what do you see it?
Yeah, you make the question much more difficult than the first one.
No.
It used to be an easy question. Yeah, I think it's really, I'm saying, for the hyperscalers today, I think first of all, now the whole macroeconomy is telling that we need to go green. So if you look at the evaluation list from a hyperscaler, when they select the data center, there's going to be more item on environmental free part, right? Carbon zero, these kind of requirements. So let's say if your data center, the portion of green energy is taking a higher number, then you will be having a higher score to be selected by the hyperscaler. The second one is the integration of operation. Right, because nowadays the enterprise application require a higher and a higher SLA from the hyperscalers. But this cannot be achieved only by the infrastructure layer. This must be integrated between the infrastructure to the facility. So the cloud operation team, DevOps team, and the data center facility operation team need to be fully integrated from the system level, from the team organization level at different layers. So I think these are the two requirements. What I can see is going to happen. I think the last one is going to be flexibilities, because when I was in doing the selection of data centers, we're always looking for, even though we are starting from 1 megawatt, but we reserve for 2 megawatt, but later we may go even higher. So the flexibility of the data center resource provision is also something we need to look at. But maybe I don't have any solution in mind, but this will going to be more dynamic, There's going to be some urgent requirement on data center, how we quickly expand the data center facility and the capacity. And also, one question maybe those experts are here answer is, I know today the container data center, prefabricated data center become more and more popular, but till now, no hyperscaler is using prefabricated data center till now, right? They're still using the traditional data centers. So how we can, involve those innovative technology, which is more cost effective, more flexible, but also can comply with the hyperscaler standard. This can also be certain barrier or challenges we need to work together to resolve it. Yeah, that's for me.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Philip. Rajesh, do you want to add something else on top of it?
Just
and even maybe localize a little bit
Yep, sure.
view from the hyperscalers with the Middle East? And maybe the constraints that we have with the regulatory compliance, and even some countries that they are even asking the operations to be run in country.
Yeah,
which is,
absolutely
what we are seeing at this moment in the region.
Yeah, sure. Okay, guys, I'm not going to market G42. I'm not doing that. Please don't think that way. Yeah, but we are a 100% homegrown company based out of Abu Dhabi. Regarding the data center design that we were talking about, so for sure, as a core infrastructure guy, this is what I have noticed the last few years. Earlier, we used to have data center racks with 4 kilowatts capacity. Yeah, that used to be there, right? Recently, I was surprised to see racks with 22 kilowatts as well, right? And they are just burning all the GPUs and burning power. So for sure, the design considerations have changed because of the requirement that has come up. With all the big data sets and petabytes of data are getting churned every day, and analytics and dashboarding happening on the top, for sure that has changed. Now, from the physical construction side, probably I'm not the right guy to comment on it, but for sure from the infrastructure and cloud side, I can tell you, yes, it has changed leaps and bounds. For sure it has changed, yeah. Now coming to because I come from, again, as I said, so yeah, compliance wise, yes, there are compliance that has been mandated by authorities, be it federal government, be it government of Abu Dhabi, or be it government of Dubai. Yes, that's there. It can be plus and minus between government of Dubai and government of Abu Dhabi, right? But compliance more or less are there. So few sectors can't have data going outside UAE boundaries. It's just a full stop there. There are no discussions on this. However, things are changing. And I can assure you that, yeah, things are changing. Mandates are getting, I won't use the word diluted, but yes, they're getting slightly thinner to give, a slight plus to the enterprise that are running and who are tightened up very hard because of those mandates, right? So things are changing, and next 5 years are going to be, it is as simple as that, yeah. So just going by pure technology, We started with physical servers, right? We moved to VMs and we moved to containers now, right? I am head of the DevOps, so I can talk about that as well. So agility, flexibility, and as you rightly said, time to market are the keys. This is how it's going to go. So yeah, we see next 5 years, very interesting times in UAE for sure. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. I think that we've got in the audience one question, so I will try to play back just to make everyone to read. And what's your question?
I would have already answered that question, but I would just continue with. As you said that our existing data centers in the region, they have more delays of the end of stream. So can't we reshape our existing data? Can't we reshape our existing data center as an expansion or whatever the facility we could add and may turn into the hyperscale data centers so that we can save much out of it?
Thank you for the question. Or who wants to pitch in and pick it up? So no, but because I think there are service providers locally and in the region that they have the aspiration of becoming a hyperscaler. So maybe the question here is that, is it worth it for them to invest and try to become a hyperscaler, or maybe making part of a partnership and maybe joining? Okay, so maybe Ross?
Yeah, so I was just thinking maybe how best to give some context. I think it's almost like meeting in the middle or meeting at a point, because again, from experience, and we're working closely with Kazna and other providers across the region at the moment, we bring very much US focused or American based focused what works in terms of plan of record, which gives us schedule, cost, timeline, quality, safety, certainty, and I think the region is still developing and it's finding that balance point. The honest answer is I don't know what it is, but it's finding that balance point of meeting in terms of the localization aspect that I said, the existing infrastructure, but then what the hyperscalers like a Microsoft and AWS, etc., want and need in terms of their business and their customer demand. So the honest answer is I don't know what that point is, but I think it has to be the sum of the parts or like a partnership in terms of trying to do that.
Thank you.
Just to add on that point, so I don't want to name the data center, but I'm sure you'll be able to guess it. So there was a data center here in Dubai, which started as a local data center, and it was converted to a hyperscale data center, right? I'm sure everybody gets the name. So yeah, so it's happening wherever, when and wherever required, it's happening. Yep.
Thank you so much. Need of the hour, I think.
Okay, no, perfect. So I think that because we have a little bit of a tighter schedule, so we need to close here, but I just want to maybe ask you that you have a great opportunity to maybe chat with the people here that we have here afterwards, because they are the strategists and the people that are building the centers. And I'm going to ask you as well a round of applause for the gentlemen here that they give us the point of view. Thank you very much.